hey, you're treated differently because your customer is different. And it broke apart the unity across all the group, right? Like, oh, hey, your customer is the doctor, the doctor's customer is the patient, and our customer is the office, right? Like all of a sudden now it's like, we're not one group, we're a bunch of different companies that have different customers, right? And the reality is like, I do think that that's true, is you are a bunch of different companies.
Welcome to another episode of Dental Riffs. I'm Gary Bird. I'm a CEO of a dental marketing agency that helps you have predictable new patient flow.
I'm Tanner Applegate. I'm a nerd who loves technology and business and founded a company called Unify to make your guys' life easier in all your processes.
Okay, so today, Tanner, I have some drama, major drama that's happening online, and like people texting me and like telling me, don't do this, don't do that, and about what I'm posting online. So I want to get into that today. But before we do, I actually was sick last night. I was starting to feel sick. So all my kids have been sick. And I got one of those IV things. Have you seen those? Those vitamin IVs? Yeah. And they come
them,
they come to your house. So I was busy. I was like, well, I'm going to be sitting here watching Monday Night Football. Can you just come by and do it? And they did. And I hate needles. I'm scared of doctors. I'm scared of needles. I'm scared of all that kind of stuff. But I knew I was getting sick. And I could feel it. I could feel my body getting tired. I didn't want to wake up in the morning, all the stuff. And she stuck me and gave me like $400 worth of vitamins. And I feel amazing this morning. Like I have so much energy. It's like it went away. And when I posted it online and asked, the medical community, like, what do you guys think of this? And everybody was like, look, it's not something you should do all the time, but if you're not feeling well, it'll definitely make you feel better.
Is it just because like it's a higher absorption rate than like other avenues?
Yeah, it's a whole bag that they're just pumping into your arm basically.
I mean, I can go take one of those like daily vitamins and minerals or whatever that's got like 5,000% of the daily dosage. I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to do the same effect, will it?
All right. So anyways, yeah, I'm feeling way better. I definitely am going to do that again the next time I'm feeling sick, but probably not something I would do all the time. So you have some big topics to talk about today. Do you want to go first today, or do you want me to go first?
I want to start off with something light. I heard on the news today. I just wanted to get your thoughts on it. I'm not a huge Star Wars fan. Always I love the communities around these these fantasy worlds, right? Like whether it's Star Wars or Lord of the Rings. I'm trying to watch the Lord of the Rings show. It's kind of slow, but it's good in general. But did you hear that James Earl Jones is being replaced as the voice of Darth Vader?
No, who's going to do it?
AI.
Really? Seriously?
Yeah, AI. So they've got
a ton of money.
A James Earl Jones AI voice that is going to take over as Darth Vader now instead of him, right? So I know that we talked about previously in kind of earlier episodes, like AI is replacing things. This is like a big mainstream thing. Yeah.
How many? Yeah, he probably gets like, because Darth Vader doesn't talk a lot in those movies. He probably gets couple million bucks.
Yeah.
So now you just have AI do it and replace it basically for free.
I wonder if he gets any types of royalties though, if it's like similar to his voice.
I bet you not. I bet you they don't. Yeah, if AI is building it, I'm paying for the AI. So the AI is building something brand new. It's a brand new product, brand new. You can't copy it, write it. You can't do any of that kind of stuff.
Well,
and if they say, oh, that's too close to the voice, then they'll just change the voice a little bit.
I mean, you heard about the lady that sued Apple because her voice was Siri and she won.
Did they actually steal her voice though?
I don't know. I mean, she was able to prove there was something there that she was able to prove that she was Siri, and she ended up winning. So I don't know exactly. I didn't go into the details of it, but
that's crazy. That's a good one. Anything else? I want to get to this drama stuff soon.
No, I mean, I got some small things. We went through things that similar to the drama. So I guess it'll probably lead into the drama stuff, right? Like you and I have been chatting a lot about offline, kind of these online things. I've been really picking up, vocalizing how I feel about the development of dental in general. And it's amazing kind of how much people gravitate towards these ideas that have never gravitated. I mean, just didn't have a place to gravitate towards them before. So one of the things that we're doing in Unify is these are things that I just kind of took for granted, that I thought I was the only one that felt this way or whatever. But it seems like this is a lot more kind of widespread about, hey, I want to know more information about what's coming, what's developing, et cetera. And so for Unify, we actually are rolling out a Unify kind of newsletter. We're calling it the industry newsletter, and it's all about like the tech and business around dental. And so I'm excited to be able to kind of have an outlet to be able to put a lot more of those like feelings and thoughts around it, but also I'm excited to be able to share it out and kind of get others engaged
Yeah,
in
that's
it as
really
well.
cool. Cool. That's awesome. How do people sign up for that?
Yeah, we'll be sending out a link soon. So hopefully by the time that this airs, we can have a link on it. Right now, we're building it with my project manager on the back end. So if you ever want to
That's
know
so
how to
cool. How
build a
often is it going
newsletter,
to go out? Monthly, weekly?
right now we're going to do every other week, and we'll see kind of how often we can get it. We want to open the contributors to anybody that wants to. We've got a group of kind of technology focused operational people that enjoy writing, so they'll be contributing from like reviews on softwares to other things like what they feel like is missing in the dental space, et cetera. So we're excited about that collaboration.
Cool. You're going to put dental riffs in there?
Guy, you know it, down at the bottom.
Let's go. All right, cool. Down at the bottom. How much does dental riffs have to pay to get to the middle?
We'll negotiate that offline. It's only going to be like 25
We'll do it on show. I'm going to commit to everybody. This is going to happen on show. That's going to happen. So, all right, cool. So here's something that I want to talk through. So, and I get mixed answers. So I've never worked in a dental office before, and I get these mixed answers, and I'm very curious of this. And I think I know the right answer, but I'm not entirely sure. So I hear this all the time. We are an office, and our office is patient first, right? So we put the patient first. Then I hear other people that are like, we are a dental company, and we put the team first.
Right.
And then I hear some that say, and these are DSOs, and granted, I get it, but they'll say, we put the doctor first. So what's the right answer? And I posted this online. It actually got a ton of traction. It had like 50, 60 comments on it, just on one platform. It didn't do as well on some of the other ones, but it was very, very interesting to me that literally everybody had a different answer. And the people who believe in their answer, like really believe that their answer is right. And the arguments that they use are actually interchangeable. So like I had somebody who was like, yeah, well, think about it, Gary. If you didn't have a patient, you wouldn't have an office. I'm like, yeah, that's true. But if you didn't have a team, you wouldn't have an office, and you didn't have a doctor, you wouldn't have an office. So you can't, that's not really the argument. So what am I missing in this? I think the answer is, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, is that it depends. There's internal customers inside of the company. So it's like the DSO serves the doctors serve the patients, and then somebody's serving the team. Like that's where it gets a little foggy for me. Or is the doctor, one of the good answers that I actually saw was like, why do we separate the doctor and the team? Isn't that all one team? And so, but then I know that there's a disconnect from like the DSO level to the office level of team and how that works. So what are your thoughts on that?
I really do believe that depending on where you sit, you do have a different customer. And I think that that's the answer. The problem though, that I always struggled with that was I was running my DSO was it created these silos where like, hey, you're treated differently because your customer is different. And it broke apart the unity across all the group, right? Like, oh, hey, your customer is the doctor, the doctor's customer is the patient, and our customer is the office, right? Like all of a sudden now it's like, we're not one group, we're a bunch of different companies that have different customers, right? And the reality is like, I do think that that's true, is you are a bunch of different companies with different customers, right? When you're a centralized RCM team, your customer is not the patient, it's the office that you're serving. So ultimately, I mean, I don't have a clear answer to that. I really emphasize kind of who's your customer with a shared kind of mission and purpose. And I think that you've got to fragment it based off kind of where you are and where you sit in the office. I think you're right. I would agree with you on that.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear the dogmatic approaches, right, that people have. I know for me, I was raised to think, just in business in general, the customer's always right. You put the customer first in everything. Right. But then I realized, like, okay, well, actually, if you put the team, comes a time where you have to put the team has to have some kind of priority, or, and that doesn't mean, sometimes people, I think, in dental hear that and they're like, you don't care about the patient? It's no. You really care about the customer. Like the customer really matters, but you have to have a team there to support them. And so it's that internal customer, and then really putting people into an order. But again, like you said, that does kind of break unity a little bit. And I think that unity is already broken, right? It's already a little bit us versus them, DSO versus the office. And if not handled correctly, I've seen that a lot. The other thing that I've seen a lot is like doctors who have, they're smaller, so they maybe have 3 or 4 or 5 offices, and they're like patient first, but then they have like nuclear toxic um, culture at their offices, and they lose their team. I think that's starting to change with doctors. Like doctors are starting to look at that a little bit differently. Where pre-COVID, it wasn't as important, but now post-COVID, it is an issue.
Yeah, we had this thing in our DSO called the pyramid of support. And what it did is it mapped out kind of, okay, who is that customer that you supported? And as you go down the pyramid, it mapped out who is that customer differently. And so I think that what it recognized and helped us recognize is like, if we serve the person above us and they're serving the person above them, then it really kind of created that support and that unity across like, okay, what does that look like? And that was a really big like visual tool to help get that across, to be able to drive the unity, but also understand that each of us were different. And so that was helpful. But I ultimately like, yeah, I don't, this is one of those things that I could definitely see people getting passionate about it based off of where they sit within the organization.
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree. Okay, let's move on to another topic. Do you have one you want to kick off, or do you want me to go with my next one?
Well, how passionate are yours? Yeah, go ahead and go with yours.
Okay, cool. So I posted online, what PMS would you use if you were to start a dental practice today? And I posted this in DSL Secrets.
Right.
And it got about 40, 50 comments on it, something like that. It was pretty, one of the more interacted posts in there that I went through. I was looking for a while that I've seen. And what happened is someone, one of the PMSs got on there and said, let's have a conversation around this. In which I was like, sweet, I want to talk. I would love to talk to the PMSs and figure out, where dental is going. Like, what is the direction that dental is going? And so far I've had 4 PMSs reach out and say that they'd have this conversation. And so we're kind of, you and I have been framing this up. I actually emailed you about it today.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing about it is that some people are like, no, this isn't really a conversation to be had in dental right now, or like it's like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. But the way I see it is like, I've never heard a conversation. I know there's been panels, but I've never heard like, here's the future, not features, the future of how this is going to look and feel, and here's the counter arguments for these different visions, and let's hash this out. And it seems to be a lot of interest around it. It's my biggest LinkedIn post when I reposted it that I've ever had. So there's something there.
Yeah, for sure. I've been thinking a lot about this too. Obviously, I've engaged a lot in that conversation that you were having on LinkedIn. I appreciate you kind of starting it and engaging it. But as I've thought a lot about this, I've thought about, what does it take for an office to decide to want to switch? Right? I read a book that talks about, you have to be able to provide 3 times value of what you currently have, 10 times value, in order to justify the switch. And so as I think about that from like a PMS perspective, what is it that, how can PMSs, or can they even justify a 3 to 10 times efficiency gain, or increase in profitability, or whatever it is, value gain, from switching from one PMS platform to another? Right. So as we sit there and talk about, okay, here's the conversations that we want to have with PMSs of like where it is, where it's going, a lot of the times people get so entrenched in certain things because of, they just don't know what they don't know. Right.
That's where, just to, full transparency, that's where I'm at. I've logged into a PMS before, but I've never like sat down and used one on a consistent basis. I just hear all the feedback. So I know there's something here. Right. But I don't know exactly what's there. And I have a feeling that you understand it a little bit clearer, or a lot more clear than I do.
It's the way that I equate it is to the idea of like, the PMS has the potential to absolutely revolutionize your dental office, the more than any other piece of software or tool, or even, I would even dare say, person within an organization. And so to get it right, you can really get it right, but to get it wrong, you can really get it wrong. Right. And so a lot of these newer developed PMSs, they're having to say, okay, let's break the stigma of what it can be and what it should be, and try to educate and bring it out there. I think that's why we see a lot of the ones that are willing to sign up for this conversation are these newer ones. But these older legacy models, like depending on kind of where they're coming from and who they were built by, the where they're at right now in their innovation or their development life cycle is very different. And I think that's why we haven't seen them want to adopt these type of conversations, is because there's no benefit that they gain from being able to jump on a call and say, hey, by the way, we haven't innovated as much as these competitors over the last 10 years. But the ones that are willing to jump on a call are going to be like, hey, this is what we've seen missing. And so we've built it. And this is where we continue to see innovation needed and necessary. And so I think that there will come a time, we're not there yet, but there'll come a time where it'll tip towards, okay, these newer products really do provide enough value that it's worth it for me to switch. I think that people can duct tape right now a lot of the need that they have from their practice management softwares from third-party products, that they don't need a full revamp of the basic practice management software, especially for those OpenDental users.
Yeah, because that's the number one. Everybody said OpenDental was what they would use. That was the number by a landslide. There wasn't even a close second. So yeah, and OpenDental works well, right? Like it works well for the people that are using it. And we integrate with OpenDental. It's super smooth compared to all the other PMSs to get what we need from it. Why wouldn't just OpenDental just be the way to go for the rest of the time? Is it because it's not cloud-based?
Yeah, there's a lot of limitations from a development standpoint that OpenDental hasn't been able to overcome. So cloud-based is one of those, right? The modern architecture and how it's built, they're working with very old technology. And so what that means is that there are modern features, and I'm actually going to release some of these in our the top 10 reasons why your PMS is costing you millions, right? An example of something that can't be built on the current underlying code for OpenDental is like a walkthrough of how to use the software, right? So if you go in and you look at a more complicated, newer tech SaaS product, like when when a user logs in for the very first time, there'll be a pop-up that says, hey, welcome here. Let me walk you through how to use this, right? And it's literally like a guided walkthrough on the actual platform that they're using. It's not like like some demo where they send you off into some other website. It's literally like a live guided tour of, okay, here's how you use it in the place where you're using it. And that type of feature can't be built into the current OpenDental because of the fact that they're built on this older technology.
That makes sense. Yeah. So someone commented on it's like about one of these companies. I'm trying to find that comment on LinkedIn. They said, what did they say? It was hilarious. I laughed really hard. Yeah.
APIs. They've been waiting for APIs for like 7 years or something.
From who though? What company?
It was on LinkedIn. I can't remember what company. They were saying that they requested API access from Dentrix then like 7 years ago, and they're still waiting on it.
He's been waiting. Dentrix promised API access in 2017, and they still haven't got it. And it feels like Dentrix, or no, he didn't use Dentrix. He used who's the holding company for Dentrix?
Henry Schein.
Schein. Yeah, he said it feels like Henry Schein is a bunch of old people trying to do TikTok. So that's some really constructive criticism there.
The irony I found in that is like TikTok is known for like being able to make it super simple and easy to create a video and to post it, right? Like they've simplified the process. So I just thought that was ironic.
Well, he probably doesn't use TikTok, but yeah. I think his point is like it's kind of awkward when you see older people on TikTok because they don't understand how it works, and like it can be awkward. I think that was his point, that it seems like there's some awkwardness in these people who are running these companies and trying to build tech, and it's built on faulty ground. Like it's built on in a way that it's not going to be scalable for the future, and they're not hitting what they promised to do. He's like, they promised me access in 2017, which is a problem. And then nobody wants to talk about it, which leads me into my third point. So this is something I've been recognizing and I've been seeing, and I'm fascinated by it. So I feel like, I'm like, why doesn't anybody talk about this? Why isn't this like a topic that people are consistently talking about? They don't talk about it from between the PMSs, or at least I don't see it, right? Maybe it's out there and I don't see it. And they don't talk about it at these events that I go to. I sit in them, I listen. And I feel like, and I may be wrong, I feel like there's sponsors, there's big sponsors with big money that are sponsoring different things that prevent people from being able to talk openly about what platforms actually, what's going on with these platforms. Am I totally wrong on that?
No, I think that you're absolutely right. And if I were to guess kind of the cause of the reason why nobody talks about it is because the reason you're going to these events, right? An event is put on by who? It's sponsored by who? Right?
The
The
sponsors,
people
yeah.
that are speaking on stage, the more and more I get into the speaking circuit, I realize that the speakers are not there because they necessarily are the best qualified person to be giving this type of talk, but it's because they're the ones associated with some type of funding or something in order to be able to be up there speaking, right? And so the world of education in the dental is money makes the world go round. And I don't
Mm-hmm.
think it's surprising that you don't hear those communications because they're not going to go up there and publicly say it because they're the
So
ones
how to
participating in it.
so how do I, and I've seen this post before. You did a post where you were like, would you trust a white paper from a company that had a product to sell you and they're giving you a study on something, but they're also selling you something based off that study? Would you trust that outcome? So how do I know if I'm a dentist? This is just me, my simple brain, right? I'm not a dentist, but if I'm a dentist or I have a group of practices and I need to pick a PMS, can I trust the organizations that are getting sponsored? It's not that I mistrust them. It's not like they're trying to mislead me, but the whole conversation isn't being had. And then I think this goes into a next conversation of like, there's a lot of dental influencers that get paid. Like they get paid by different vendors and companies to not only talk about their product and say, hey, you should use my product, but that also prevents them from discouraging from using the product and maybe using another product or saying another product might be better for you because of X. Is And this is true, like this is a problem everywhere, right? Like people online are shilling bitcoins, like not bitcoin but like different coins, different
Mm.
NFT projects, and then you come to find out it was a total scam, right? Like it was literally just to get people to invest their money, and then it collapses underneath it. So it's not like this is unique to dental. I just think that I feel like we all understand that happens in NFTs and in crypto, but we don't. It seems like it's not something that's happening in dental, but it is.
I don't know if I would agree with that. I do think that people know it happens, right? Like everyone knows, hey, if you're a sponsor at this event, you've got a booth, you're paying to be at the event, right? Like that
Yep.
kind of stuff isn't like people aren't naive to that. And so the fact that, okay, money is exchanged from one pocket to another and therefore kind of interests are changed, I don't think that's surprising. But
Yeah.
um, where I think might be surprising is like, hey, this consultant that I'm using to be able to help me, who claims to be unbiased, actually does have some incentive to be able to do it in a different way. Like that kind of stuff, I think would be surprising, and is, I don't know. I wonder if it's actually becoming more and more transparent though too. I mean, there's the people that I've seen, especially in the consulting space, that have gotten larger and larger. They're pretty explicit on like, hey, this is an ad versus like this is a
Mm-hmm.
genuine content,
Yeah.
right? And so I think I think that is getting better, and I think that's because that's what the industry is demanding. And so maybe the conversations aren't being had because it's not actually, there's not too much surprising to uncover. I don't know. What do you
Mm-hmm.
think?
So I have a different perspective because I came into dental totally different than you did, right? So I came in through the marketing lens of things. And so I'm going to these events. I wasn't really paying attention, to be honest with you, like PMSs, those kind of things. And
Right.
so when I started to realize, like, oh, that this person pays this person money, they talk about this platform here. These people pay these people money, they talk about this platform here. And then I started piecing together, like, wait, why isn't anybody saying? I would talk to people privately, and they'd be like, I hate this about my PMS, and I need this to change. And when is it going to innovate? When are things going to change? We need an all-in-one product, or we need a product that's going to do this or that or the other. And I'm like, okay, interesting. But then publicly, no one's talking like that. And I'm like, why? Why won't people talk about it? And that's when I started to piece together more of the micro influencers. So you got the events and then the micro influencers. Um, and so I was like, okay, that makes sense. But you're right. People are getting better about talking about it. And I think that's probably why I recognized it. It was like people were making it abundantly obvious. And then I was like, okay, this makes sense. And it's not like I was so naive that I didn't realize that they're sponsors and, you know, sponsors can influence things
Right.
and things like that. Definitely wasn't the case. It was for me, like if I'm going to take on a sponsor, I'm going to be like, well, I'm going to talk about whatever I want to talk about still. Like if I can't talk about the things I want to talk about and be a sponsor, then I don't want sponsors. But not everybody thinks that way, and not that that's the right way you have to do it. That's just how I feel about it. So anyways, I just think it's interesting, and I definitely think it's something that should be talked about more often.
At the end of the last event you and I connected at, Jody Evans' event, right? Building leaders at every level. We were just chatting about, okay, how did it go with that vendor relationship, right? Obviously, when she does this again next year, I wanted to be a vendor at this, and kind of like she wanted to get my perspective of having been in the audience, being kind of sold to, and then now being a vendor where I would be a paid sponsorship. What would my ideal situation be of those two? Right. And my thought was, I want to be able to give content because that's my style, right? Like I want to be able to actually give value for the audience so in which they learn from me being able to participate in this event, not because I stood up there and pitched my product to them. Right. And I
Mm.
said, but obviously, like I do want them to know about my product and whatever it does. And so my suggestion was, if you can honestly and truly say, I picked these products as a vendor because I think that they're the best at what they do, then what that allows you to be able to do as a person putting on the event, you can stand up there and be like, hey, this is why I like this product and this is why I would represent them. Right. I love it when somebody that has the position to be able to sponsor other products says, yes or no, like I'm not going to sponsor them because I don't think that they're the best, versus yes, I would because they are the best in this field.
Or yeah, or I like them for this reason, right? They're the best in this particular niche for this reason.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So do you think everybody should take that route, or how does
I
that
think
how would
everybody
that work?
should, but I don't think everybody does. Right. My biggest pet peeve in this, which is rampant and probably even explicit, but it still just happens, is like when your Henry Schein rep is also the vendor of your technical products, even though they're not qualified at all. They're like, hey, yeah, you need this product. Like, let me sell you this software that Henry Schein owns. Like, obviously, the business perspective of it is, let's keep you within the same ecosystem that Schein is, so that way
Mhm.
you continue to buy our supplies from us. Like that kind of stuff happens all the time, and business owners just accept it and still continue to buy from them. Like they're qualified. It's like whenever I walk into Best Buy and I'm like, don't try to sell me a computer because you don't actually know as much as like you should know as you're selling these things, right? So it's just the same with these supply reps. Like, don't sell me the software that you're telling me is the best in the world because I know that it just lines your pockets.
Yeah, that's a problem.
So that's a problem. I don't
Interesting.
see that as much in the DSO space. I think that they are a lot more cognizant of like outcomes and processes and stuff. And so I think they're a lot more picky about who they pick. But anyway, that's that. I do see that in dental, and the individual practices are the ones that pay for it.
Fascinating. All right, what other topics do you got?
I want to chat about vanity metrics, right? I think
Ooh.
that they're everywhere. They're rampant. Do they serve a place? Are they good, or do we need to get rid of them? And so this is one based again off of one of my LinkedIn posts recently, where I called out the vanity metric of collections percentage, right? The problem with this metrics is it can be so easily skewed to look great. Like, hey, like I've got 99% collections. And the reality is like, yeah, you just inappropriately write off a bunch of stuff. And then all of a sudden, yeah, you can have 99% collections and everything. But the reality is these vanity metrics exist in so many different places, right? Like almost to a degree of like, even revenue can be a vanity metric because based off your skew. Another extremely famous vanity metric is EBITDA, right? Your EBITDA percentage of revenue. We hear that one talked about a lot, but the reality is you can skew it any way you want to come up with whatever number you want. So do they not? So my question to you then, Gary, is are they bad all the time where we should just get rid of them and use some kind of standardized metric? Or is there a place for these vanity metrics where they really serve a purpose?
Well, it depends because it's a broad topic, right? And so I think that you can manipulate. I've seen people manipulate almost every kind of number. So I think all numbers can be manipulated for the most part. Or a lot of numbers can be manipulated depending on how you phrase it and word it. Um, and so it's important to call that out. And then what's the purpose of having these numbers? I think that's the real conversation. So let me give you an example of Vanity Metrics. So I just got off a call with a sales. It was a sales call. Guy had 5 locations, and he said this other marketing company recommended half the marketing budget that you did. So why is that? Like, why should I sign with you when they're half the marketing budget that you're going to be? And I said, well, I don't know. I can't really tell you why they did that. I can just tell you that we based ours off of a cost per acquisition model. You told us you wanted 20 to 30 more new patients at each office, multiplied by the cost of acquisition that we think that you're going to have based on competition, supply and demand, and your operational bandwidth, answering the phones, phone conversion, those kind of things. We put you here based on what we can project. And he was like, well, why did they put theirs half as much? And I said, did they base it on the number of patients that you wanted, or did they just put a number that made you feel good? And he just kind of looked at me, and then he said, well, I like that they give me the option. They gave me options to put my marketing budget where I want too. They said, you can, put this half as much and put it where I want. And I laughed just like you did right there. He said, why are you laughing? And I said, if you want to, I said, I think it's funny because I probably know more about where to put your marketing budget than you do. And if I let you do it, you're probably going to mess it up. He said, well, that's why I'm talking to you. And I said, well, it sounds like they want you to pick where to put your marketing budget. And you don't need me if you know where to put your marketing budget. And he was like, oh, okay. And so it's like, in that particular instance, it was just vanity numbers. They literally put a marketing budget that they knew that it would be easy to say yes to. And it had nothing to do with the outcome that he actually wanted. And so something that I've been really working on, Tanner, is I'm reading a book about how to execute at a high level. And one of the things that it works through for entrepreneurs is that we love strategy. So Vanity Metrics actually really feed up into strategy. And you and I do it all the time where we're just like strategy, right? And we're just like strategy on top of strategy. But then execution's like our execution level of our strategy talks probably like less than 1%, right?
Oh, totally.
Because we're always up here in strategy. So strategy for entrepreneurs is really easy. And Vanity Metrics feeds into strategy because you can just make stuff up off of the vanity numbers. Execution, though, and I got the framework here for execution. It's fascinating. I think this is like it's 4 things that you need to have for true execution. Number 1, you had to have singular focus, which strategy doesn't like that because strategy is like we want to have 100 strategies. You need to have leading KPIs, not just lagging KPIs. So leading KPIs are what are the actions that lead into the outcome. So dental is huge on all these lagging KPIs. Like our revenue this month was this much. It was low. It was like, okay, well, what are the actions that led to that? They don't even know. It's like, oh, insurance money from 6 months ago and didn't come in like it did last month. It did, and then this month, it's like most dental offices don't even know where the money's coming from. So how are you going to build leading KPIs if you're just looking at the lagging? And the way to look at this is one is predictive and one is influenced. So you want to get to the predictive actions. You still want the lagging there to see if you won or lost, but what are the activities that you need to do to feed up into that? I'm more interested in that than anything else. And then next you need to have a clear scoreboard of winners and losers. And it needs to be very, very clear on what winning is and what losing is. I heard this quote. It said, if your team doesn't know what winning is, if they don't know when they're winning, they probably don't know when they're losing either. And I was like, man, that's so true. And then lastly, you need to have an accountability cadence. So whatever the KPIs are, who cares? If you don't have that structure, you're not going to have execution. And I think Vanity Metrics feed into people who love strategy and suckers like me who will spin their wheels and that stuff for hours. But more than likely, it's not going to lead to any kind of execution. And that's what I see a lot in dental and in business in general.
Yeah, no, I love those. Those are great. Like, I hope that those can get put on a poster and sent out to everybody, because I agree with that. I mean, especially I loved how you called us out at the beginning, where it's like singular focus. Like, yeah, you and I could have so many millions of focuses. I'm actually very impressed, Gary, that you're able to stay focused on your one company of SMC, because even like within my position now of Unify, I've got one, maybe even two additional companies spun up on the side that I'm not actively super involved in, but I just see an opportunity and I'm like, okay, let's work towards this. But I
Well,
definitely think that
here's why, Tanner, is that it's impossible to be good at a high level at a lot of things.
I agree. And I think
It,
that's
even if you do it passively, it's taking something away from the big thing.
what's more valuable, though, a generalist or a specialist.
Specialist. Oh, every time. Name me
Oof.
any.
Oof,
Name me in.
we are gonna have a good conversation around this one day when we have a
I,
lot more time.
no. Let's talk about this. We have time right now. So okay.
Okay.
So a specialist is more valuable than a generalist in every real world scenario. So a specialist doctor gets paid more than a generalist doctor. A specialist mechanic makes more than they charge more per car that they work on if they only work on foreigns or they only work on electric than a generalist does. Now that doesn't mean that the generalist can't occasionally build a super GP practice or build a really big brand. I'm not saying you can't be successful as a generalist, but experts always make more than generalists.
So here's where I will counter and say that I think that if you are a doer of the work, I would agree. But if you're a creator of the work and you're the entrepreneur, that's where I don't agree. Because people like Elon Musk is so far from a specialist, it's crazy, right? Like, he is a generalist in a million different things. I mean, and even something as like if you were to go across and look at a lot of those, Steve Jobs is the same way, right? Even Bill Gates has got his hands in a million different things. Like, the generalist idea of connecting a lot of different ideas together is where the value creation has and where the value of entrepreneurship really truly lies, right? Like, the idea of, if you specialize in one thing and you're the only one good at that thing, the reality is like, you're not going to necessarily be bringing in a lot of information from these outside interactions that you've had, where you now all of a sudden aren't going to be able to contribute above and beyond when you hit that threshold of expertise on a certain thing, right? Because you don't have that creative influence of these outside activities that you're involved in. So there's this book called I'll have to look it up, but it talks about, I always felt bad because I was TikTok's termed this recently, and I like it. It resonates with me. A multi-passionate individual.
Me too.
Right. And I always struggled with the idea that I was a multi-passionate individual, because all my friends around me were trying to be specialists, and I was like, I'm a failure. I'm not going to achieve anything in life. I'm doing too many different things at the same time. But I honestly think it's because of that idea that I have branched out and gotten to know so many different things at the same time, that I'm able to bring a unique skill set into a specific vertical that I decide to choose in.
Yeah. No, I'm not, and we need that, right? Like, entrepreneurs need that perspective, and we need to dabble. I'm not saying don't dabble. I'm just saying that the dabbling does take away from the overall focus. Let me give you an example. What's the number one company in the world? If you Google number one company in the world, what company is going to come up?
Apple.
Apple. How many products does Apple have?
Yeah, I mean, it keeps expanding.
27. It's small. You can fit them all on one table. It's very,
Okay.
very small. And some of them are like different models of like smaller or larger laptops, right? And so because they're singular in focus, they absolutely crush their competition. Let's take Microsoft, who's second to them by quite a bit. And let's just look at Microsoft. How many products does Microsoft have? Over 101. Now, here's the thing. I would take Microsoft any day of the week, right? Like, I'd be happy to be like, yeah, I created Microsoft. So I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying, if the specialist always wins at the end of the day, because they can hyper focus. That's my belief. I may be wrong on that, but that's what I see over and over again.
What's interesting, though, is if you look at the revenue streams of Apple, the products of Apple are one thing, but the revenue streams are not singular in focus in that regard as either, right? Like, the revenue streams of Apple what they get from like their services, what they get from their app
But
stores,
but
etc.
but Tanner, the only reason they have that revenue is because they built their products the way that they did. They were
I agree
singular
with
and
that.
focused in the product that allow and on purpose to allow them to be able to control how they monetize that product through the services that they have on their platform.
Yeah, I agree. I do agree that specialization in an early startup is essential. And I agree that innovation needs to be focused around that specialization. But what happens is that I do think that eventually the broadening of the horizons is necessary and provides a lot more value globally.
I agree with that. So like for us, we're a dental marketing company for people who want to grow, dental offices that want to grow, right? So that's our focus. Like we're hyper focused on that. But then we have this SaaS product that we want to build, that we're building, that we've built for ourselves. We had to separate that out because it couldn't live inside of the company because it created too much turmoil and we wouldn't be able to scale. It would have stopped us from scaling and would have stole resources away from the company and attention away from the company. If it was like, this is our focus now, it needed to have a separate team, a separate focus, a separate budget, separate outcomes, separate, like it had to be separate. And now SMC is actually one of its clients, but we separated that on purpose. I love talking about marketing, talk about marketing all day, not just in dental, but just in general. So I created something separate that I can play in that doesn't disrupt SMC. I have a little community. We talk about marketing. I learn stuff all the time. I even do podcasts around it, but not inside of SMC. Old Gary would have tried to build that inside of SMC and cause major turmoil. And so I dabble too. I'm not saying don't dabble, but the more you dabble, the way I've heard it online put one time was like, Elon Musk isn't flipping Airbnbs.
Right.
So it's like, yeah, I could buy Airbnbs. It's a great opportunity, especially here in California. I could make a lot of money, but it would take away my attention. I'm not going to do it.
I agree with that. And I think this plays back to the idea of the all-in-one solution, right? Like the all-in-one, really what it is it's a generalist in too many of these different product categories where you're no longer an expert in any of them.
I find it fascinating that people are pushing for that because I actually was like, yeah. Because I heard people talking like, we just need like an all-in-one PMS. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds cool. And then my business partner, Ryan, was like, name me an all-in-one that's good. And I was like, iPhone. He said, that's not an all-in-one. That's a product that integrates with everybody. They're playing ball with the whole world. Now it's at their terms and they're going to take a cut of it, but they're integrating with everybody. I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, you're right.
To me, that's the no-brainer piece of the PMS category that I do not understand why it doesn't exist. If I was a PMS and I owned a PMS, I'd have an app store button on the top right, and I would say, connect with any of these third parties you want. And every time you click on it, it'll automatically install on our back end with the database. And we're going to take a piece of it instead of having to go out and trying to build our own and all of a sudden like own all of that. And then what's even better is you become the Kirkland, right? Like you figure out what everybody wants, what software everyone's installing on your apps, and go rebuild it and then charge cheaper.
Yep. Yeah.
I don't know. It's just mind blowing that doesn't exist.
Why doesn't that exist?
I don't know. I've been trying to beat my head against the wall figuring that out, and I think that there's too much of this siloed competition world that exists in this PMS space.
Yep. Exactly. I think that's what we need to ask, Tanner, when we have this next PMS conversation. I think that's the question that we ask.
Everyone does it. HubSpot does it. Salesforce does it.
Everybody
Apple
does it,
right? Like, why can't dental do it?
And it would be amazing, Tanner. Imagine if every single tool that you had integrated with your PMS and then you just had access to it.
I mean, obviously there's some that are more defensive than others, right? Like they don't give you access to the APIs, blah, blah, blah. But there's some that are open to it. They just don't enable it, which is where I think the missing boat is, right? Like that's what OpenDental, that's why everyone loves OpenDental, is because, hey, I can go and fix it the way that I want with these third-party companies. But OpenDental has so much more opportunity to integrate with these products and what they do.
They don't charge, do they? They don't make anything on integrating, right?
No, do they don't. But that's what I'm saying. They should.
Yeah, they should. Absolutely. Yeah, even if it's small, every time. Because if you're the one that figures this out and you bring it all together, it's big money.
Yep.
Those are all the biggest companies. The ones that figure out not how to sell the thing, but how to make money on each transaction inside of the thing times a million. That's why Apple did what they did, and that's why they were singular in mind, is like, we're actually not going to make money just on the phone. We're going to make money every time somebody buys a song, every time somebody buys a book, every time somebody downloads an app.
That's why you can't buy a Kindle audiobook straight from the app. You have to go into the web browsers because Amazon does not want to share that revenue with Apple.
So interesting. Cool. Anything else we should go over?
No, I think that was good. Got me all passionate right there at the end. Fired up.
Cool. Good. That's what I was going for. Next, I need to like find topics like that and hammer them. That was really good. Thanks, man. That was a good conversation.
How can I fire up Tanner?
Later, man.
All right. See you.